Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Soul Fire Inspiration Podcast. If you're joining for the very first time, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Webby. I'm a child of God, a husband, and father. You will also find me spending energy and time as a performing and recording artist. I'm based out of Nairobi, Kenya. So I have some exciting news that I'd like to share with you, and it's taken me a while to record a follow-up podcast episode to the one that's previous to this. What's Good 2021. I hope your 2021 has actually started off and is going well so far, regardless of all the things that have happened in 2020 and perhaps the effects of which you're still reeling from. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're in great health. I hope you're keeping your head up, your spirits up as well, and keeping one foot in front of the other. I certainly am, and I'm grateful for that. I think all my experiences from the year that was have taught me to be appreciative of all the good that is in my life, whether that's good friendships, good food, the ability to just walk out the house and, enjoy the sunshine and feel the breeze on my face, the simple things that we tend to take for granted. And so, by that outlook, I'd say that I'm blessed, and I feel really blessed. I hope you can be able to look at your life and experience or feel the blessing that you have as well, because even if you're going through a tough time, there's always one thing that you could pick out of your difficulty that's worth celebrating and worth, wrapping all your thoughts around and using that as a springboard of where your positive energy comes from. In other words, you will see a diamond in the rough. And I hope that you can always see a diamond whenever you look in the rough. Well, we're not here to just talk about diamonds in the rough, even though those are part of our lives and our constant features in our everyday life experience. I am here to hopefully encourage you. And speaking of encouragement, this is the good news that I wanted to share with you. I've actually been working on a new record. So this is an EP. For those who don't know what an EP is, it's basically a short version of an album, and this one is 5 songs long. It's called Let the Light In. Now, at the time of recording this podcast episode, just a couple of days away from releasing it. It comes out on the 19th of February. So if you're listening to this post 19th of February, then that's when it was released. And it's a worship-inspired EP. It's taken 3 years to do it because it was a process that I partly didn't enjoy because it seemed to take a lot longer than I would have liked. But in hindsight, I realized it was exactly right. Everything that happened during that process was necessary for making a stellar project, number one, but two, for me to be able to measure the growth that has taken place or that would take place. And there's definitely been a lot of growth in my life. And even that growth has been reflected in the music. The thing that I'm really grateful for is that you can't tell the time span when you're listening to the record, but the truth is the message in that record is timeless. And so I guess that sort of cancels itself out, right? So this EP is called Let the Light In. I did mention that it is a worship-inspired EP. And Let the Light In basically means to let Christ in, to let the light and the love and the presence and the essence and the majesty and the magnitude of who God is into your life, into the dark spaces, into the hard spaces, into the difficult spaces, into those spaces that you would rather keep hidden, from anyone who would have eyes to see or ears to hear. It's letting the light of God flood you so much that the darkness can no longer remain there. You become a changed person. You become a renewed person. You become a revitalized and refreshed person. And what that really looks like in context is worship. When you worship God, you invite His presence into your space. And what that does is it allows you to have communion with Him, when you focus on who God is, everything else grows strangely dim. This is a sentence that my mom used to say a lot when we were growing up, that the things of this world would grow strangely dim when we focus our eyes, when we fix our eyes on Jesus. And that's essentially what this whole EP is about. It's about choosing to recognize and to see God even in the places where the typical eye wouldn't see God. And so it's been a privilege, an honor, a joy, and an experience to work on this project for the last 3 years. And because it is a worship EP, of course, the songs are founded on scripture. And, as I'm drawing closer at this point, as I'm drawing closer to releasing this project, one of the things that I was inspired to do as a creation, or can I say additional value that I created to support the project, is a devotional. Yeah, a devotional. I felt an impression in my spirit to create a devotional that would help bring context to the songs, but also help to draw out the message in a way that anyone from anywhere at any point can be able to take the words, the inspiration, and these scriptures, or the context within these scriptures and the songs, and apply that into their lives and apply that into their daily experience. And so I did create a devotional, and it's called the Let the Light In devotion. Yeah, I didn't go very far from the name because really the message is essentially the same. And so the reason why I created this devotion is not just to kind of offer additional value. It's not so that I'm just giving you an EP and something to read or listen or listen to or watch. It's really so that you can find meaning, and it's really so that you can draw more out of the offering. There's a lot of truth, there's a lot of encouragement and revelation and inspiration that I've received poring over scriptures and either turning them into songs or allowing their inspiration to become songs. And I feel like that would be relevant and useful to you that is listening to me right now. And so, of course, this devotion is essentially it's a vehicle through which I can share with you the spiritual truths that I've discovered that led me into making the record. And all that is just to extend the encouragement that I've received. And hopefully this will add value to your own walk of faith. So with that very long introduction, I'd actually like to welcome you to day 1 of the Let the Light devotion. This is the podcast series of the Let the Light devotion, the Let the Light In devotion. I stand corrected. So the first song on the EP is called Help. It's a song that's really about crying out to God to step into your situation when you've done everything you know to do, when you've used up every option, every resource that you've had available to you, and you're at the end of your rope and you have no other means by which to solve your problems. And you look up and you realize that at the end of the day, God is an ever-present help, or this is the moment when you recognize that you should actually turn to God. And so the scripture behind this song is Psalms 121, and I'm going to read from verse 1 through 8. And it says this: I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not let you stumble. The one who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never slumbers or sleeps. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as your protective shade. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon at night. The Lord keeps you from all harm and watches over your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever. Now, that's such a powerful scripture. It's so encouraging. Like, it doesn't matter what you're going through. You read that scripture and there's no way that it will not stir up something in your spirit. In fact, it makes me realize this. If you've ever struggled with fear, or if you're putting in or have put in your best effort to overcome a challenge and arrived at a dead end, then this is exactly the scripture you want to read, because you'd find encouragement in the words of this psalm. The mountains referred to in verse 1 of this psalm, which is also really the main thought behind the song. Verse 1 is the main thought behind this song. The mountains could be symbolic for a place you go to, looking for security or answers to complex problems. The thing is, though, if that place isn't God, then you're eventually going to discover that it isn't reliable. In fact, you're going to be discovering progressively because it'll fail you every time. Sometimes the money gets funny. And that's actually a lot of times. When we're saying sometimes, it's really just like a modest way of saying it's all the time that the money gets funny, really, because there's never a time when you have all the money you need for all the things you want to do or for all the things that you really need to get sorted out. Well, other times life happens and the proverbial rug is pulled out from under your feet. There are times when you've done everything right but still fail. You followed all the rules, you played by the book, you followed the blueprint, but the thing didn't work out. At other times, your expectations go unmet, and then you're left disappointed or discouraged. Now, here's the thing. This scripture points us to the person from whom all security comes, one who has never failed at anything. He is the one who chose to come to earth at one point in history, all for the sake of giving us the promise of an eternal future with him. Imagine that. He has experienced what you and I have, and he knows our weakness. In fact, scripture says he's familiar with our weakness. This is God. I'm talking about God. He's great, ever so great, but yet he sees with concern the little things that linger on your heart and mind every day. He's the same one who made you, and he knew you'd be struggling through whatever you're going through right now. In other words, he sees you. He's the God who sees you. God is waiting for you to lean on him, trusting that he will walk you through your situation. This psalm is proof of just that. And the psalmist, King David, wrote this psalm having experienced the help of God at different times of struggle and had come to the realization that no other thing or person could truly save him. Like if there's any person who went through the motions of life, that was him. From the time he was anointed, in waiting to become king and the time he ascended to the throne, I gather there's between 14 and 17 years in there. And he spent a significant amount of that time running for his life because King Saul wanted to kill him. So you can imagine the person who wrote this thing was writing from a place of experience. So then Psalms 121 shows us who God is to the person who chooses to look to him for help. We find another reminder of this in Psalms 127, verse 1 through 2, about how futile human effort is, devoid of God's help. It says this: "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves." That's Psalms 127, verse 1 through 2. And that's the NIV version. I really love this psalm. In fact, this psalm has been a reminder for me that all of my efforts couldn't save me on my best day, because at the end of the day, I have absolutely no control of the outcome of things. When I found myself hustling and struggling and pushing really hard to sort of manipulate an outcome or to create a certain ideal situation for myself, 9 out of 10 times it's a struggle. Well, 10 out of 10 times it's a struggle. 9 out of 10 times it's a no, rejection. I've faced more rejections than I have faced, or can I say have received acceptances. I don't even know if that's grammatically correct, but I think you get the point. And this scripture, Psalms 127, verse 1 through 2, reminds me that unless it's God helping you, unless it's God carrying you through, then everything that I'm doing, no matter how good it seems and no matter how good my intentions are, one, it's very likely to fail, but two, it's also very likely to be pointless. What does it actually look like for God to build your house and cause you not to labor in vain, to watch over the city, so that your guards or yourself, if you're the guard, do not stand watch in vain? I think it really means receiving from God the blueprint or the pattern that you should follow. And sometimes it doesn't give you the whole thing, it just gives you the next step. I think it comes from a place of walking in obedience and trusting that where you are right now, even if it feels the least ideal of situations, is exactly where you need to be. Why? Because it's part of your process. It's developing something in and through you, also for you. We don't tap into the full potential of what God created for us to be, or who God created us to be, without process. And process is the thing that we tend not to want because it's uncomfortable. It's that thing you would much rather avoid if you could. But it is what's necessary for developing endurance and faith and character. That's what I'm looking for. And ultimately, it allows you to increase in capacity to receive the very blessing that you're praying for. Sometimes the process that you're going through is actually a result of the prayers you've prayed. If you're asking God for something and it requires a significant degree of development or processing, then you're not going to escape the process if what you want is the blessing. Every blessing comes with a process. There are some blessings that come without necessarily a deep or a lengthy or an intricate process to go through. But ultimately, every blessing requires that you have capacity to receive it. And some blessings will require a lot more capacity than others. And so if God is not the one leading that journey, if he's not the one dictating the terms, let me say dictating, but really God is not a dictator. He's a very gracious and merciful God. He doesn't force his way or himself on us. He invites us into a place of relationship, into a space where we can experience him for who he is and for what he's planned, what he's holding in his hands for us. If you're willing to create room for that, then what you do is you open yourself up to unimaginable things. And so what it looks like in the context of Psalms 127 is allowing God to be the one who charts the path. Because even though your plans are great and you must plan, you must come up with structure, you must come up with a format, or at least think about what it is that you must do or want to do and how you want to do it. At the end of the day, it is God who, in whose hands the outcome rests. And when you know that everything that he does and everything that he builds and everything that he releases is for your good, it allows you to be at peace. So that even if things do not turn out the way you want, or they do not go the way you would have expected them to, it's still always better than your best laid out idea. I love that God promises rest to those he loves. That's you and I. And rest, this rest I'm talking about, it comes when you're not the one doing the heavy lifting. That's what it is. It's not being removed from a place of difficulty. It's actually being able to have confidence and trust and steadiness or steadfastness in the middle of it. So today, choose God's help and receive his rest right there in the middle of whatever you're in. I really do hope that this encourages you. And if you've been encouraged, please consider sharing this podcast episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. This is only day 1 of the Let the Light In devotion, and I hope that you will stay with me so that you can be able to go through 5 days of this devotion. There's 5 songs, so there's 5 episodes. Hang there with me. I believe this encouragement train will bring value to you. Now remember, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this, I was going to say video. I'm so used to talking about videos, but I'm going to leave a link in the description of this podcast episode as to where you can get the Let the Light In EP. I'd love for you to listen to it. It would be my absolute joy to know that it's a blessing to you. So share with me, what are your favorite songs? What are the songs that speak to you or into your situation the most? I'd love to hear that. So get in touch with me. Wherever you're listening to this podcast episode, there should be a message button somewhere. Or you could just email me on podcast@soulfireinspiration.com if that's easier. Get in touch with me and I'd be happy to read your messages and respond. But in the meantime, I hope that you do take care of yourself, be good, and always, wherever you're found, be love. I'm going to catch you on day 2.